So I compiled a list of 15 lessons that I learned and that are pretty counterintuitive, but have helped me a lot building both size and strength, especially at the same time. Because as you know, this whole channel is meant to be the channel on building strength and muscle at the same time. As a normal person, I was able to build 20 kilos of muscle while at the same time learning skills like the human flag or doing an 80 kilo weighted chin-up or a 240 pound weighted dip. And the first point is just about that training for both size and strength at the same time. And this is a big real lesson that I'm sharing. I've seen this being one of the biggest predictors of success in both building a great physique and strength, even more so than people who focus just on one or the other, okay? And I understood this the first time, and then I had a lot of confirmation about this, but I understood it the first time when at the start of my training journey, I was training pretty much for bodybuilding, which is fine. It's a training where your focus is on your physique, on building your muscles, just on hypertrophy. But I found this kind of training boring, not stimulating, and I was pretty much plateauing. I was not making progress. Then what happened is that I started experimenting a bit into the world of strength. Especially in my case, it was calisthenics, but then I migrated into all sorts of different forms of strength, like powerlifting or street lifting and more, okay? But I started testing out the world of strength. And by the way, if you're interested in building your strength and your physique, especially at the same time for free, you can get a lot of resources that I created personally in Project Delta, which is the link in the description. And that's not shallow stuff, by the way. Like, I put a lot of thought into those resources. Really, you see the videos, but there's a whole other world I'm creating in Project Delta that you don't see. So really, if you're interested, that can be very powerful, and you can get it in the link in the description. What happened was that I got pretty much addicted to this. And this was a surprise, feeling that training had to be boring. It had to be grueling. I got addicted to it. I looked forward to it. And my progress actually went up. And not just in strength, because you may say, of course, you are training something new. Of course you make more progress. No, I started making more progress, even in my physique, even in growing muscle, compared to when I was focused in bodybuilding. Then what I noticed was that my situation was not really original. When I looked around, especially in those communities training for strength and muscle at the same time, that the average lifter looked pretty much elite, especially in terms of physique, while those people, a lot of them mainly focused on strength. So the lesson that I learned really was that, sure, it helps having solid understanding and principles for training, but the sheer soul philosophy of training for size and strength, which is why I'm such a big advocate for this, size and strength at the same time, can by itself lead to greater gains than any combination that focuses solely on bodybuilding or on a specific strength discipline. Another thing I learned is about program length. So we normally have an arbitrary length for our programs. Maybe even at the gym, if you go to a personal trainer, he's gonna give you a program that's like 6 weeks long, sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks. But why? Let's stretch this idea. What happens if you change your program every 1 week? Okay, every week you change up your program. What would happen then? Or what if you keep your same program, the same program for a year? What would happen then? Like, I feel like this way of thinking can be misleading. Instead, we can think about the length of the program as the speed of feedback that we want. So the thing is that your body, this is your body, there you go, doesn't really think in programs. It doesn't, it just doesn't. It thinks in the stimulus that you give it, and as long as that's hard enough and productive, it makes progress. It really, regardless of whether the program, you tweak it every 1 week or 1 year, okay? I don't recommend changing things every week because you don't even have the time to get used to it, but that's another point. So it's about speed of feedback. So what I recommend is, instead of thinking about program length, think about how often do you want to reassess if what you're doing is working. And my recommendation is 4 weeks, especially when you're experimenting with new things, maybe things that you're hearing from this channel, for example, that you haven't tried yet. 4 weeks tends to be the sweet spot, because less than that, and you're not giving your body even the chance to get used to that, to see if it's leading to results, see if you're improving. Sometimes it takes 2 to 3 weeks to see, to get some momentum. But more than 4 weeks, it's probably too much, because you're extending into territory where if something is not working, you probably know it by the 4th week. Or by not working, sometimes it just means if you can't recover, okay? Maybe you're doing too much. How do you know? Well, if you don't even wait a couple weeks, you don't just have enough data to make an assessment, okay? So instead of program length, think of speed of feedback, okay? You should have a strategy that is multiple weeks or months long even, and in that have little checkpoints for feedback, and that should be how you think about program length. So reps. Reps are only fulfilling the larger principle of ensuring the weight is heavy enough. So it's not like reps are something magical. This is what I'm trying to convey here. Why should we do like 4 to 12 reps for hypertrophy, or maybe 1 to 6 for strength? What's the idea behind that? Reps are just a practical way to make sure the weight is heavy enough. That is the higher principle. And I'm saying this because sometimes it's the missing link of understanding how training really works, how results happen because of training. Sometimes it's this piece of understanding that can unlock the next level of strategizing and structuring your training, which leads to a lot bigger gains in practice. This is what happens a lot. So reps are not something magical. It's not about this magical number, okay? It's about ensuring the weight is heavy enough. Why is that important? Very simply, if you think about a spectrum from like, let's say 4 reps per set, maybe here we have 12, maybe here we have 25, and here we have 50 and 100, okay? What happens, let's say that you go to failure on all sets, okay? Because you want the training to be challenging. What happens to the weight that you use on this spectrum? So if you do 4 reps to failure, maybe the weight that you use is gonna be a lot heavier, okay? A weight where you can only do 4 reps is gonna be pretty heavy, relatively, of course, to your strength. So let's say it's just randomly 100 kilos. If you can do 12 reps, maybe the weight is gonna be lower. I mean, it's your same strength. If you can do more reps, it's gonna mean a lower weight. So maybe 80 kilos and maybe 70 kilos here. just random. Maybe here is gonna be 50 kilos. Maybe here is gonna be 30 kilos, okay? So more reps means less weight. Now, what is the problem with a weight that is not heavy enough, which is pretty much everything that's higher than a weight where you can do 25 reps? The problem is that in this range right here, it starts to be less about hypertrophy, less about strength, less about bigger muscles, and more about efficiency, more about endurance. Basically, a bigger muscle, after a certain point, isn't necessarily the first adaptation that your body thinks of. And if our goal is to build bigger muscles, which then leads to also more strength, training in a rep range that's too high leads to a weight that is not heavy enough, the real bigger principle, which just makes you train for the wrong thing. You're not training for hypertrophy anymore, but for endurance. So what we do, with plenty of data now showing the effectiveness of this, for hypertrophy, we train in the 4 to 25 rep range. And if you want it to be more pleasant and less like hell in every set, 4 to 12 reps is ideal in most cases, okay? It's less suffering and easier to go to failure. But the key principle behind it, so that we can advance our understanding of how training works, is that really the weight is heavy enough. Since to some of you this can be very useful, I wanted to make a quick advertisement, well, from myself, because I always wanted to create one place, just one place where one would find everything you would ever need to know about training, about how to get stronger, how to build muscle, like all the most powerful ideas and models all in one place. And so I set out to do it, and took me 2 years of work, but I made it, and you can get it in Project Delta. Project Delta is the link in the description, and it's free. And once inside, you can get this in the premium tier. So again, this is meant to be the last thing you will ever need. So if you're interested, you can check it out in the link in the description of this video. The next idea that I love is that if you just train hard and don't skip workouts, if you just do those two things, it's gonna be enough to win. And by win, I mean building a ton of strength and a ton of muscle, an elite physique, far beyond what you think is possible for yourself. And I've seen this over and over. I had my beliefs broken on what was possible. And that's why I'm sharing this with you, because this is not intuitive in practice. You may kind of understand the logic, but in practice, it's mind-blowing the kind of results that can happen if you just focus on those two things. So really, until I realized this is what happened. I didn't take this seriously, actually, both factors I didn't take seriously. So when you don't take train hard seriously in practice, what it looks like is sure, this set, like you're doing a set, maybe a chest or whatever, and you're doing your reps, you're getting closer to failure, which is here. And here it starts to get pretty painful. And you're thinking like, I mean, it's hard and it's probably enough. I'm here in the gym, I'm working hard. It's probably enough if I stop here. But what you don't know is that this very hard challenge, especially the harder it is, that is the thing that convinces your muscles to improve. And so you're really quitting when it's most important. So train hard is really the thing that opens the door to adaptation. And so what I did for a long time, also because there was a lot of advice saying that going close to failure is as good as going to failure, which now we know is false, okay? It's just proportional. The closer you go to failure, and I mean, this is also pretty logical. The closer you go to failure, the bigger the challenge you give to your muscles and the bigger the growth you're gonna see. And that's exactly how it is. So, part one of the equation is train hard. Part two is don't skip workouts. And this one is tricky because, for example, in my case, this was my progress for a long time. Not always, of course, ups and downs, but after the newbie gains phase, I was stuck. And even though I was training under many coaches invested into this, I was pretty stuck. And one of the reasons was that sometimes my programs were 4 or 5 days a week. That was the plan. And because of life stress and work, whatever you want, I was training maybe 3 times a week. So I was keeping about 1 workout every week because I thought, I mean, I'm already going there 3 times a week. Maybe this is relatable. And it's gonna be enough, right? Well, guess what? What happened when I had the chance to be more consistent and training every workout, pretty much not skipping a workout for 4-6 months? Unsurprisingly, and I mean, we're spending so many hours in the gym, so this is important. Unsurprisingly, when I stopped skipping workouts, my progress started going up again. Well, this is significant after months and years of being stuck. So this is when I realized the first time the power of just not skipping workouts. Now this is part of a bigger principle that I'm going to explain in another video. Of basically this equation points to the sheer amount of training that you're doing in, for example, in a year, okay? By following this, training hard and not skipping workouts, what happens is that in a year, you're gonna have a lot more training than many other people or the version of yourself that skipped workouts or didn't train as hard. And it's that sheer quantity of extra training that adds up and in the end of the year leads to that extra kilo of muscle that then is very visible. It leads to the PRs that you make in many lifts, quite surprisingly. Oh, and that much stronger despite training for 10 years. Well, guess what? This is the source of that result. You can do, this is another thing that I do, and I think is very powerful. I'm gonna make a video on this. So instead of viewing things that you can do in the world of training, strength and hypertrophy, as a list of principles, like I can do these reps, apply this principle for training splits, this principle for programs, whatever. Instead of having this list of principles, I turn this into a hierarchy because I realized that not all principles have the same importance, the same power in delivering results. And so I created a hierarchy, and I have videos where I have mentioned this. I'm gonna make a video specifically on the hierarchy, but guess what's at the very top of the hierarchy, where it's 100 or even 1,000 times more important than other principles? It's just this: train hard and don't skip workouts. If you just do this, even if you mess everything else up, it's gonna be almost impossible that you don't grow massive amounts of muscle and strength. If you do everything right, but skip on this, it's gonna be almost impossible that you succeed at growing muscle and strength. Next, I wanna introduce a few points on one of the coolest movements out there, the muscle up. Like, what better expression of sheer strength than being able to pull yourself over the bar? So after experiencing doing weighted muscle ups with 50 pounds or 22.5 kilos, being able to do explosive muscle ups, I put those clips often at the end of each video. So you may have seen me do this or on Instagram. And training people who got even stronger than me, coaching them into competitions and more. There's some distinctions that I want to tell you about muscle ups, and maybe even give you a roadmap on how to unlock this powerful and very cool movement, which you can very much do while also getting jacked. So how awesome is that? So there are a few types of muscle ups. So let's talk about types of muscle ups. And some are better, some are worse, some are best to do at the start of your journey, some later on. So the main three very different types are the slow muscle ups, the normal bar muscle up, and the muscle up on rings. So those three are actually more different than you might think. So the slow muscle up is the only muscle up that I didn't ever do. And that's because it's heavily influenced by the proportion of your arm. So I have this portion of my arm that's quite short. And for that reason, even when I try to do the transition, the bar is still pretty high up. And so I am not able to turn over it in a slow manner. Okay? I can only do muscle ups, and I can do actually, even if I can do more than 10 strict normal bar muscle ups, I can't do a slow muscle up. So the difficulty of this is very much dependent on the structure of your arm. There are some people who are not very strong at all, but can do this very easily. So I wouldn't really even consider this as a normal muscle up because it's not about explosive power like the normal muscle up is. Now, for bar versus rings, the rings muscle up, if you want to learn a skill that's simpler, this is much easier because you don't have the bar. You can pretty much do the transition going through where normally you would have the bar. So if you want to have the easiest muscle up, there's the rings muscle up. Many women learn the rings muscle up, so you can consider that. But ultimately, the regular muscle up is going to be the one in the bar. So how can you go about learning it, about practicing it? So we're going to talk about two things. First, how to practice when you don't have the strength to get to a strict muscle up. And second, the next point is how to actually build up the strength to do a muscle up, because ultimately the practice can only give you like that last 20%. But the 80% comes from this. So the next point is going to be about this, but let's talk about practicing it. You really have two roads to practice the muscle up when you don't have the strength. The first road is loop bands, and the second one is skipping, where you bend your legs and pretty much help yourself, giving yourself more momentum with your legs. That's skipping. I believe that skipping may actually be better in many cases because the way you pull, the way you express strength is more similar to a normal muscle up compared to a loop band, where the band pretty much pulls more at the bottom of the movement compared to the top. And pulling with that is a bit weird. So you can really experiment with both. I liked keeping more and then cleaning it up as you get stronger. But those are two, you could say, variations on how to practice the muscle up. Now, before we talk about building a strength, how about an advanced version of the muscle up, which is very fun, something that you can aim for. So again, you kind of have two paths here that I like both. The first one is the weighted muscle up route, okay, where you pretty much work on doing one strict muscle up. So first you need to develop a strict muscle up, and then you add weight to it until you can try doing one rep with as much weight as possible. My PR, if you want to try to beat it, is 50 pounds or 22.5 kilos. And I'm actually, again, because of this part of the arm, which is pretty short, compared to my chin up or pull up, where I did 80 kilos or 175 pounds, this muscle up is pretty weak in comparison, but I mean, you gotta work with what you got. I know that this is still something to be proud of. So you can go the weighted route, or you can even experiment, which is very fun, with the explosive muscle up, or what I like to even call the feather muscle up. Basically, it's a bodyweight muscle up where you pull with so much power that you don't even have the transition on top of the bar. You just are able to pull yourself up so powerfully that you arrive to the top without transition, that just straight arms up. A pull-up so explosive that you pull yourself up until you're to the top position, okay? That's a fun way to turn a muscle up into something more pretty advanced at that point, okay? So these are the types of muscle ups. But now, the next point I want to talk about, there you go, here, is how to actually do a muscle up, how to train for it, okay? So, we have different schools of thought about doing the muscle ups. And the problem that we have is, which is better? Technique? Like, which is more important? Technique or strength? I can tell you this, and I've seen this over and over. I've seen people with no idea on how to do a muscle up, but that had a big back, a lot of strength, that were able to do it in a day. People who focused on technique and didn't focus enough on building the strength for the muscle up, that even after years couldn't do one. So muscle up is all about strength, not technique, and especially pulling strength. I see people who train the dip for when they're over the bar. That's useless. Nobody lacks the strength to do a dip. The strength that you need is the pulling strength to just do a pull-up so explosive that you find yourself over the bar like magic, and that's it, okay? And guess what, by the way, another thing is that if you have been following this channel, you know that in the long run, a lot of strength comes from hypertrophy. And in this case, since it's pulling strength for pull-ups, a big back. Now, big is relative, but a more jacked back is going to help a lot even in doing muscle-ups. That's why we are able to train both for strength and hypertrophy at the same time so effectively, even more than people who specialize, because there's so much overlap that if you can be smart about it, you can really go very far with this. So, the muscle up, a lot of it is about strength. And for this reason, even before you start practicing it, okay, even before you start practicing it, what I recommend is that you're able to do around 10 pull-ups, okay? 10 pull-ups, and I'm talking about clean pull-ups. Not slow necessarily, but straight arms, pull with the chin above the bar. And if you can, one explosive pull-up to your ribs. So not to your sternum, but a bit below, to your ribs. If you can't do that, and if you can only pull like here, barely, or to your, just touching with your chest, that's probably too early. And your energies would be probably better be focused on building hypertrophy and strength before you spend time and risking getting injured on a muscle up pretty unproductively, okay? So, in summary, if I wanted to learn the muscle up from scratch, I would. Step 1, focus on back hypertrophy. And by the way, I have a 2-hour guide that I made, now that I'm thinking about this, on back hypertrophy and strength that you can watch if you're interested. It's super in-depth, and yeah, that's it if you want to. So focus on back hypertrophy, and this really never stops. Then, once you get to the requirements, you can start practicing probably with a bit of keeping. And you're gonna find out that in 1 to 2 months, because that's how strength works, 1 to 2 months of practice, you're gonna get a lot stronger. You're gonna be able to do more pull-ups, you're gonna be able to do higher pull-ups, you're gonna be able to reduce the keeping in your muscle-ups, and pretty much continue this cycle, okay, until you can clean up your muscle-up and you can do it strict. Then your focus is gonna be, again, continuing this cycle, building your back hypertrophy, training to failure, just like a bodybuilder, but you can be more creative with it, have more fun, which is the power of training both for strength and hypertrophy at the same time, and eventually do more strict reps and maybe explore the more advanced side of muscle-ups, which is very fun, weighted muscle-ups and explosive muscle-ups. Now, another point very quickly on muscle-ups, and then we're gonna conclude this, because not many people can do muscle-ups like that. So I think this is a unique perspective that this video can give you, is that sometimes training pull-ups, actually weighted pull-ups, can be better than training muscle-ups. This is counterintuitive because normally you would think that specificity always wins. So if I want to train the muscle-up, I'm gonna be better off training the muscle-up. Well, this is what I did. I did 2 experiments years ago. Experiment 1, focusing on the muscle-up. Experiment 2, so focusing on the muscle-up. Experiment 2, not doing the muscle-up for 2 whole years and just doing pull-ups or chin-ups. I noticed that there's not really much of a difference in transfer to the muscle-up. Well, what happened was, when I trained for muscle-up specifically, couldn't make much progress, okay? So as long as the pull-up strength remained the same, the muscle-up, regardless of how ingenious I got with my training, stayed the same. But even though I didn't focus on muscle-up for 2 years, in the second experiment, when my pull-up got stronger, I tried muscle-ups for just a couple weeks and I made new PRs. Which, after you've been training for many years, this is not something to overlook, okay? So, just a little tip, maybe instead of losing too much of your mind on muscle-ups, if you're having fun with them, practice them, I'm very supportive of it. But maybe for the optimizers of you, if you want to make it optimal, maybe limit the muscle-up practice to a couple reps just to have fun, but then focus on building, of course, your back and a strong weighted pull-up. And you're gonna see like magic transfer to the muscle-up, where it just follows it 1-to-1. When the pull-ups get stronger, the muscle-up gets magically stronger. When you make a PR in pull-ups, you magically make a PR in muscle-ups. Now this point is really important, and it's about injuries. Now I'm not gonna bore you with injuries because that's not a fun topic. We like to build muscle and not to think about when stuff goes wrong. But the thing that I want to tell you about injuries, okay, maybe this was not a good idea, is that injuries are not taken seriously enough in training culture. So not seriously enough. And this is a pattern that I'm seeing a lot, and I want to make a video on this overall concept of risk. But basically, we don't think that a normal person like you and me, going to the gym, doing regular workouts with accessible stuff, can create permanent damage to your body. This is huge. This is a big problem. Okay, injuries are not taken seriously enough. Because nobody really teaches you how big of a deal they are. What happened to me, for example, is that I was able to notice this pattern, like many people do, when it's too late. So I got like tens of tendonitis cases, especially many years ago. Now recently, I'm not getting any injuries because I'm very, very careful. And so you can do this as well. I got a shoulder injury that kept me stuck, unable to train. And I was super motivated, couldn't train for 4 months. I got a knee injury from doing too much volume when I was training with a coach. My God, that kept me stuck from squatting for more than 1 year. Insane. Like imagine mentally that you're in your 20s and your knee hurts for a whole year despite not stressing it. Crazy. So what you notice is that it takes, unfortunately, years to see the pattern, to see that, man, I'm really, with my training, despite being young, able to create even permanent and long-lasting damage. So recently I saw a video by Mike Israel on his worst career injuries. And you started to see a pattern. Basically, like 3 out of the 5 injuries that he got them in his 20s, he's now in his 40s, and he still has got them after 15 years. Those injuries haven't healed up. So this is to say, injuries are not taken seriously enough. So a mantra that I want you to have, and then we're going to talk quickly about how to avoid this, because this is a really bad situation, is that, let's write it here, no pain is normal. Okay? This means when you feel pain, bells needs to be rung, or whatever that saying is, okay? It's a sign that you need to watch out. Something is not normal. You need to do something about it. Not to ignore it, not to train over it, to do something about it, okay? This is serious. It takes years to see injuries that haven't healed for years, because until you had them and nobody has taught you, you don't know how serious this can get. So in the long run, no pain is normal, and stopping when you have pain in the long run is always worth it. Always. Like when in doubt, stop. Quit the workout there, go home, and wait until the injury has healed. Sometimes it just takes a day, sometimes just a week. But if you train over it, that week becomes a month, that day becomes a week or a month, if you're lucky. And if you're not lucky, that week becomes forever, okay? So it helps, and that's the next point on injuries. There you go, little snake arrow. It helps to understand where injuries come from. So where do injuries come from? Most injuries come from just one place. Imagine that. We hear about, where injuries come from. We hear about injuries coming from technique or from maybe healing from massages. The cause of injuries and the way you prevent them and heal them are in 99% of cases the same thing. And that key word is volume, or the sheer amount of, like the quantity of stress that you give your body. So when volume is bigger than how much you can recover from, especially in terms of connective tissues, the result is injury. So, since your recovery, you could say whatever you want, is pretty much stable, what's the variable we can work on? It's volume, okay? So, to solve the injury problem, or to prevent it as much as possible and to heal from injuries, you work on volume. Especially, there are 2 volume-related problems, okay? Number 1 and number 2. The first one is like sheer volume. Basically, It's just, even in the best situation, there's an amount of training that you can't recover from. Like imagine training 8 hours a day. Like there's no massage therapy or strategy that you can do where you can recover from 8 hours a day of training. So there's sheer volume that it's just over your limit. But also there's volume. How can I say this? Volume that you're not used to yet. Okay? So this is how it works. This is the trickiest one. Okay? So to prevent this, I do a thing that I call the safety month. Like very practical here, very practical advice. I very highly recommend that you do this. Very simple. So the safety month means that whenever you do something new, especially a new exercise, and by new, I mean that you haven't done even for 3 months, that becomes kind of new. You wait a month before you go to failure, okay? Before you express your full strength in your sets. So week 1, you go pretty easy. Week 2, a bit harder. Week 3, a bit harder. Week 4, you go to failure. Okay, this allows for that volume to go from something that you are not used to something that you are used to and can handle. Like, have you noticed that when you do a new exercise, even if you do a super easy workout the first week, the day after you're full of dumps, you're super sore. Why is that? Because you're not used to that volume, and that's how your body works. When you're not used to volume, even a tiny amount of training is a massive stress on your body. So what happens, for example, when you introduce a new strength exercise, like this, maybe for hypertrophy, a safety month is enough. But for strength, it's even more tricky because you work with higher weights and less reps. What happens when you introduce a new strength exercise after a while and you go all out doing a super heavy weight that you're not used to? Like all this first week of stress is like magnified 10x. And so it becomes super risky to do a strength exercise that you're not used to. And so what I do often is even extend the safety months for strength to 2 months. This means that I actually plan the difficulty of the training for that strength exercise, for example, maybe weighted dips, so that I gradually make it harder and harder until after 2 months, I go all out to failure or like the regular intensity. And then the beauty of this is that you can stay at this level, okay, of failure, or at this after 2 months or whatever. You can stay at that intense level even for like 4 months, okay, and still get better. It's just that this safety month is what prevents that injury from happening, which would stop you from going hard. And I mean, in the long run, it's just more productive, safer, and more productive for even for getting more gains. Because in the long run, after all, what stops most advanced athletes? Most often is just injuries. So this can be very intelligent as well, not just a form of prevention. And the second very quick way to counteract the second thing, so this was about volume that you're not used to yet, so you take a safety month to get used to it. But how about sheer volume? You just want to test it out gradually, like this. So if you're normally doing, like for chest, for example, 15 sets a week, you don't jump to 30. You jump to 20, test it out for a month, see if you can recover, then do 25, test it out, and if you can recover, then you do 30 or even more. But you need to go gradually, okay? What happens if you make the jump? First, it becomes a big jump all of a sudden, which becomes volume that you're not used to, and so you get the risk number 1. plus risk number 2 from the sheer quantity of stimulus that you get, and so it's pretty much guaranteed injury. And this is stuff that you can avoid, by the way, okay? And given how serious injuries can get, which was our previous point, maybe this is worth considering. And I'm making this list because this is the list of stuff that was super influential on my results, that is not talked about enough. That's how my criteria for choosing those points. Next is the exercise matrix. Basically, not all exercises are the same, and we waste a lot of time on bad exercises, okay? So there's really a matrix that can help you pick exercises and understand the different qualities, because not all exercises are the same. So there are 2 axes in the matrix. There you go. And axis 1 is all about compound exercises versus isolation. Examples of compound exercises are, for example, a chest press, or a bench press, or a squat, or pull-ups. And examples of isolation exercises are bicep curls, or like tricep extension, or leg extension. So what are you noticing here? Compound exercises are exercises that involve multiple muscles. Usually they are chest, back, and squatting exercises, and so on, more complex movements, while isolation exercises tend to be about smaller muscles like biceps, triceps, in this case, quads for the leg extension. Okay, isolation work on one muscle only at a time. Now, this distinction can matter because, first, compound exercises are more stressful. If you notice, you're able to lift more weights in a bench press or a squat compared to a bicep curl, okay? So they're more stressful. They should be done early in the workout. And really, if you are short on time, you should focus more on these and less on this, okay? Because since they are more stressful, it means that each set, okay, so per set, these are gonna provide more training. So if you do 3 sets of these and 3 sets of these for the same muscle, you're gonna get more growth from doing 3 sets of compound. Okay, now the second axis is about free weights versus machines. There you go. And some examples are for machines like a chest press, lat, pull down, or even a leg press. And for free weights, we may have a bench press, basically barbells, dumbbells, okay? Now, what's the difference here? It's pretty similar, actually. So free weights, per set, okay, per set, they're gonna give you more growth compared to machines. If you notice again, after a set of an exercise, which is a free weights exercise compared to a machine exercise, you're gonna find yourself being more stressed, more tired, your muscles more sore compared to a machine exercise. So what does this mean? First, again, you want to do your free weights exercises early in the workout. And second, if you're short on time, which again, in a way or another, most of us are, you want to do more of this. And actually, if you want the best combo of the highest return on investment exercises, basically the biggest gains for the least time, you want to focus on exercises that are both compound and free weights. For example, a bench press, a squat, the fundamentals, okay? That's why they're so good for growth. Now, does this mean that you don't do isolation or machines? No, because when you want to do more volume, for example, if you want to do 3 workouts or 20 or more sets a week for a muscle, so you're doing a lot of work on maybe your back, okay, a muscle, you want to spread out all that volume into multiple exercises. You don't want to do like 1 hour of rows, for example, to train your back. You want to do multiple exercises. And when you need that many exercises, you need some variation, and it's better to do pretty much pick from wherever you can get all those exercises, okay? So it's good to do some back work with machines, maybe isolation if you can find some isolation back exercises, and so on, okay? So if you have limited time and limited sets, it's probably best to choose from those buckets, but overall, if you especially have a lot of volume, you can pick from all the axes, okay? But this is just to show you the distinction between categories of exercises. Now, still on exercises, especially for hypertrophy, I want to mention one rule that can help you filter out good from bad exercises, and that's first to fail. First to fail, okay? This is especially for hypertrophy. Now, the problem here is that we spend time sometimes on bad exercises, and the cost is results in terms of hypertrophy and strength. This is a problem since we're spending so much time in the gym. We don't want to waste that time. I mean, of course, okay? So we may want to understand this. Now, first to fail means that the target muscle must be the first to fail, must be the limiting factor. So an example is lat pull down, okay? Lat pull down. Target muscle, for example, for you may be back. In practice, when you look at it, instead of doing it blindly, you pay attention. Okay, you notice that in practice, your limiting factor, so your first muscle to fail, is not your back, but your biceps or your grip. What does this mean? This means that the muscle that you're training the hardest, that you're training to failure, is not the target muscle. So the muscle that you're growing the most is maybe your biceps or your forearms. And this is a problem, okay, if your target is the back. So I actually discovered this rule and thought about it, because you're not gonna find it elsewhere stated like this, okay? I formulated this in this way. The insight came to me when I realized the importance of failure, training to failure. So in order for your muscles to grow, this is important. In order for your muscles to grow, which is our goal for hypertrophy, of course, which is also important for strength. Anyway, why do muscles grow? Muscles grow because they are challenged. They think, this is hard. An event makes them think, this is really hard and stressful. I must adapt by growing. What is this challenge in practice in the real world? It looks like training to failure, close to failure or to failure. Logically, and in the past, many said that training close to failure was enough and that you didn't need to train to failure. Recently, it was shown, and this makes sense logically as well, that actually the closer you go to failure and the more muscle you're gonna grow, okay? It makes sense because, of course, the harder the training is, and the more of a good reason your muscles have to grow. So, within the limits of safety, training to failure is gonna be beneficial. But what happens when your target muscle is not the first to fail? Then you're not training to failure. We got a problem here. So when you need to pick exercises, when you're testing them in the gym, pay attention to this rule. Everything else is secondary. especially once you know about the categories, the exercise matrix here, okay? This is the big filter if you want to. Once that's in place, the big rule is just first to fail. You must choose exercises where your target muscle is the first to fail, or you're not giving the right challenge to that muscle, and so why would it grow? Okay? Super simple. One rule, no super complicated stuff. There you go. Next counterintuitive point is that ab training, I guess, is overrated. Man, the calligraphy here, it's amazing. Abs training is overrated, especially in the context of strength. So the thing is, training is not free in the sense that it costs time, it costs energy, it costs willpower. Okay? So if you're training something, spending those resources into something that doesn't really have a return that's worth it, maybe you would be better off investing those same resources either enjoying your life or in something more productive in training. So I see a lot of this in strength because, for example, in calisthenics, where you see the extreme of this, you have movements, just movements that I'm able to do, like the front lever and the human flag. Front lever, where you're horizontal, holding yourself against gravity with your strength, and the human flag. Okay, we know the human flag, this is the head, this is the feet, okay? We know those movements, and I was able to do those. And I'm not saying this because I'm amazing, but to show you in the real world, until you try them, you don't really get it. And there's the illusion that really the main point here, since you're horizontal against gravity, the main limiting factor is in your abs. But in practice, that's not true at all. I will even tell you, and I don't care about common sense in here, evidence above everything. You see that in practice. I saw it when I did coaching a lot. I see it in the gym still. I stand by the fact that probably your average guy has enough core strength to do both a front lever and a human flag. So what's the limiting factor? So you're going against gravity. The real thing here is, for the front lever, is the back that needs to pull the whole body against gravity and keep it horizontal. So the back is the limiting factor here. This is what the average guy doesn't have. For the human flag, it's a combination of back and shoulder. So the back is pulling the body against gravity, the shoulder is pushing it. Okay? So back and shoulders. So, what would I do if I had limited time in the gym? I would either just keep the time instead of spending it on training abs in this case. And these are the most extreme exercises that just go against gravity, let alone other exercises where your body is vertical. Like just training the exercise will probably give you far more benefits than training core for strength in the gym. So in those cases, I would spend those resources in focusing on building a bigger back and shoulders or a stronger back and shoulders, which in the long run is mostly about building bigger back and shoulders. So there you go. Core training is overrated. And if you don't see any extreme examples like this, I don't know what to tell you. This comes from real experience. And I just told you that you can save yourself a lot of time and effort. So that's nice. Next is kind of a curious point about sleep and sleeping 10 hours. What? Wait, okay, 10 hours. Because I've heard, actually there are studies about this, how for athletes, for performance, sleeping up to 10 hours, sleeping a lot, is continues being beneficial to performance. Okay, the more you sleep, pretty much, the more results that you get. But is sleep that crucial for training? I think that you notice about those athletes training, sleeping this much, is that you know why they need that much sleep? Because they train that much. So the sleep that they need is in proportion to the training that they do. So if you try doing like a 10-hour hike, if you ever tried that, you're gonna find out that you're gonna sleep 10 hours that night, that you're completely destroyed. I had phases where I was training 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. Guess what? I was sleeping far more than normal, okay, when I could. But maybe I went to sleep earlier too, also because I was super tired, okay? So there's this thing about sleep that we need to understand that, sure, sleeping a lot is beneficial, but it's also in comparison to how much you train. If you don't train that much, you are not even gonna be that tired. So in a sense, this is to say, this is pretty natural, and when you're training a lot, like a pro athlete, you're kind of gonna want and need that pro athlete level of sleep. Now, sleep can still be important for normal people, and that's our next and final point on how to sleep better. And it's gonna really be the 80-20, okay? Maybe I'm gonna do a video on this. And why do I talk about this? Because I had a huge phase where I was kind of trying to optimize all facets of sleep, both because of the recovery benefits for training, but also the mental freshness during the day, okay? So I understood the importance of sleep, and I even went to the extreme with it, doing a lot of things that now I found out were pretty useless. Spoiler, morning sunlight and blue light glasses and all kinds of that kind of stuff, okay? That you try it, seems beneficial, then you take it away and you see that nothing changes. So what's the 80-20 after going super deep on this for quite a while and learning what matters versus what doesn't, okay? Without having you revolutionize your life around sleep like a weirdo. So number one, temperature. So the ideal temperature is when pretty much you're cold, you're a bit cold without a blanket. Okay? If you're staying in your bed without a blanket and you're a bit cold, like you need one, that tends to be the perfect temperature. Like for me, but everyone's different. For me, that is about 18 degrees Celsius or 64 Fahrenheit. But for everyone, it's the same. Like temperature is huge. That's why I'm putting it first. In the change of the season, like when we go from summer to winter, all of a sudden, I'm able to sleep 8 hours without any breaks, just because the room temperature is lower by 5 degrees. So temperature is a big one. So if you're able to lower it, especially, you're gonna find yourself sleeping a lot better. But you can also regulate with how much clothing you have and the blankets and so on. Second interesting one is a comfy mattress and even pillow. So again, this comes from real experience. I once had a mattress that was too hard and I just couldn't sleep. Then I tried one that wasn't that hard. I didn't know that it was too hard. I thought it was just a mattress. I tried a less hard one. I stopped tossing and turning around for an hour before getting to sleep and waking up and all of that. And all of a sudden my sleep got a lot better. So if you can't just stay in one position and be comfortable and you have to turn around every 5 minutes, Maybe it's the mattress, just from experience. Next is darkness. So basically this is in the category of things that disturb your sleep. So these two are more about staying asleep, getting asleep. This can disturb your sleep. So when you have light, so maybe let's say that you have to wake up at 9 a.m. naturally, okay? You can wake up at that time. But light is coming through the window at 6:30. You're gonna find out that at 7:30, not only you wake up naturally, but you're also pretty awake and you struggle to go back to sleep to get that extra 1.5 hours of sleep. Now you may say, if I wake up naturally, why is that a problem? The problem is because maybe you went to sleep at 1 a.m. and so you only slept 6 hours and you can't get to sleep. And then you're tired for the rest of the day, even though you can't get to sleep, okay? So darkness, use like blackout curtains. Make sure that your room is dark to sleep better and not wake up earlier. Finally is noise. Okay, this is another disturbing factor. This is especially to go to sleep. You can use white noise. You can use earplugs. Basically, I mean, that's it. The solution to noise is pretty cheap. White noise to avoid background noises that can disturb you. For example, maybe if you had an old style analogic clock and you hear the arm of the seconds, tick, tick, tick. So that can cause problems for sleeping. And if you miss 20 minutes of sleep every day because of stupid noises that you can simply avoid with some earplugs or a white noise machine, which is pretty cheap, why not? Final bonus, and then that's it. Activities that are not too stimulating. So maybe if you watch certain YouTube videos that you can't stop watching and you end up at 3 a.m. still watching those videos, maybe swap them for something else. Maybe for reading or for some videos that are not that entertaining at that time of the night. That's like a bonus point. But the big ones are temperature, absolutely, comfy mattress in some cases, and darkness and noise. And everything else really is almost uninfluential, like red lights or morning sunlight. Like the circadian rhythm is much stronger than you going out on the balcony. And if you try not doing that for a week, if you've been doing it, you're gonna find out that your sleep is pretty much fine. So as usual, at the end of every video, I'm gonna leave you with a clip of a lift of mine from my archive, already recent, and a physique update, just for, I guess, proof that I practice what I preach. So you can enjoy that. And I'm gonna see you next week. I got a nice banger coming up, so you want to be sure to be there for that.